In the build-up to the new season of Doctor Who, I'm taking a look back at every episode from Season 1 and re-reviewing them all after a year of dwelling. Spoilers ahead for the whole series. Episode 6, Rogue, written by Kate Herron and Brian E. Redman. It is the very first episode in a very, very long time to be written by someone who hasn't previously written Doctor Who. This is, for all intents and purposes, a solo one-off episode, which is fine. We finally have the Doctor and Ruby back in the episode full-time, which sadly hasn't been the case for 3 weeks now when this was first on, and honestly, it's a fun one. The series, like the next series as far as I can tell, follows a very strict format. Episode 1 is the futuristic, kid-friendly episode that doesn't really have any replay value. Episode 2 is the one that plays around with the format of TV and breaks the fourth wall. Watch it happen, I'm sure it's going to happen. Episode 3 will be the big think piece episode that gets talked about a lot afterwards and is potentially remembered as the best, potentially remembered as the worst. Episode 4 is the Dr. Light one. Episode 5 is the solo episode with a fun concept but maybe not enough behind it to make it really work. Episode 6 is the guest writer doing a Doctor Who version of a TV show. And 7 and 8 are the two-part finale. Watch this come true. Anyway, Rogue is Doctor Who's answer to Bridgerton. It's an historical adventure throwing our heroes into a fancy 1800s party with dresses, drama and Jonathan Groff. He's modern Doctor Who's answer to Jack Harkness. I mean, he's not in place of Jack, but following the old sex offender accusations, John Barrowman won't be coming back to Doctor Who ever. And Rogue very much feels like a new interpretation of that kind of character. Not just because he's gay, but he's a morally ambiguous time-travelling 6-foot white spaceman with an invisible ship and a hankering for kissing the Doctor. Yeah, he is a Jack Harkness surrogate. And that is no bad thing. I really enjoyed Rogue, the character. In fact, I loved Rogue and the Doctor's story together. Following so many heavy romantic stories between the Doctor and Rose, Martha's crush on the Doctor, Amy's complicated relationship with him, then he married her daughter, the unusual flip-flopping of crushes with Clara, and finally the romance with Yaz, it's nice to see a Doctor and companion have no romantic chemistry at all. It enables episodes like this where the Doctor can have that one-off romance. It humanises him, which in a way I fear was the wrong move for this series, but at the same time a one-off romance is something I've been waiting for a long time. The range of emotions and situations the Doctor was in during the episode were excellent, and that couldn't have been achieved as easily without Rogue and the Doctor. I always think back to The Girl in the Fireplace when the Doctor had that mini romance with Renette. It was out of place, it was a bit wrong because she was it was creepy, right? But I do feel like that gave us a hint of what it could be like if the Doctor had a one-off romance, but he also had that thing going with Rose. It was the wrong time and the wrong place. So it's really nice to finally see that kind of storyline play out with none of the weirdness or bad implications. You know, in that episode, the Doctor's a lot like Elvis. You know, he's got ridiculous hair and he groomed a child. Anyway, I'm going to stay on this topic a little bit more. I think Rogue arresting the Doctor and the pair of them chatting on Rogue's ship was brilliant. The Doctor slowly getting more and more panicked without losing his playful side, the respect for Rogue slowly growing, and vice versa. Rogue cracking a smile, eventually growing a likening towards the Doctor, exploring the TARDIS, very much an I'll show you mine if you show me yours kind of thing going on between them. It felt somewhat realistic while also being about as sci-fi as possible. Ending this with a fake argument in front of everyone as they work together and finally Rogue sacrificing himself to save Ruby. Yeah, I just really enjoyed that. I would love it if we did see Rogue again because he was great, but on the flip side, I also really like how it ends. He even says, "Come and find me," which, while you'd think might be a tease that we'll see him again, I think this works beautifully to hammer home how painful this moment was for the Doctor. Rogue saves Ruby with confidence, sure of himself that the Doctor would find him, but the Doctor knows that's not possible. Those final words mean nothing. Rogue died with hope. I don't know, I think if we never see Rogue again, this ending will be a nice horrible ending for the pair, which we don't get often in shows like this. If they're trying to go more with the in-your-face approach with this show, then I like the idea of not every narrative thread having a happy ending. However, I do hope we see him again. He was a lot of fun. The Doctor in this one got to shine again, showing a lot of emotional range. I felt that Ruby kind of got sidelined a bit here. Not to say that she wasn't important, but other than her almost death at the end, there wasn't a lot going on for her in this one. That's not the end of the world either. She did have a whole episode to herself, and then the very next episode has her name in it and is all about her, so it does make a lot of sense for this episode to be more Doctor focused. Visually, this episode was a bit of a backward step. It still looked good, but there are a lot of nighttime scenes that weren't shot very well, though the VFX on the shapeshifting birds was kinda cool. One other interesting thing I want to mention before moving on, when Rogue and the Doctor are in his ship and the Doctor tries to convince him that he's not the enemy, he shows off a little carousel of his old faces. Now realistically, this is only there to help introduce new viewers to the idea of previous lives, and starting with David Tennant was a bit of an obvious move since that was the shot they used for a lot of the marketing. Funny that. Yeah, David Tennant's been used solely to advertise the show to all the fans since Russell T Davies came back. I'm going to leave the behind the scenes production grievances alone for now, that's coming, another video, one day. Anyway, yeah, the Richard E. Grant face cameo sucks and I wish they hadn't done that one. I don't want to get too deep into it really, but this face isn't canon, and I know they've always been fairly loose on canon in this show, but after the dumpster fire that was the Timeless Child story arc, you'd think they'd at least try to keep some kind of cohesiveness in the lore. But apparently not. I don't care if you say everything is canon or that one Schalke doctor should be there. At the end of the day, that was added for one of two reasons. One, and this is the less likely option, is that it'll lead somewhere down the line in maybe Season 2. But I have no faith in any kind of season arc payoff anymore under this writer. Or two, the real truthful option is that this was only added to get people talking, to keep this episode as a discussion point among fans for a few more hours online. So much of the marketing behind this season was rooted in keeping it relevant just for a few weeks, teasing big reveals in every episode. You know, that's not what we want. We want a well-written, good TV show. If you have to rely on big reveals to keep your audience hooked, that means even you have no faith in the quality of the episodes themselves, which is really sad coming from Doctor Who. Anyway, yeah, I really don't like that little thing. It really annoyed me because it just felt cheap. It felt like the kind of tease they threw in for the sake of social media and marketing, and as soon as that stuff infiltrates the show itself, I'm pissed off. Hence my feelings towards the existence of the 60th anniversary, but that's for another video. Anywho, the rest of the episode, outside of the Doctor and Rogue romance and the small tidbits I just mentioned, it's not actually a very good episode. I know this episode is loved by some, and I know a lot of people hold this one very close to their hearts because at the core of the episode is a really well written romance between two men. Seeing that as the focus of your favourite show and relating to it, and kind of wishing for that your entire life, must feel amazing. So I totally see why this episode is so beloved by a lot of people. However, for me, with very little personal weight in the themes of this story, my feelings towards it are just a little less strong. I like it for sure, and there is so much about it that I love, but not enough to fully distract me from the glaring issues. It's not a good Doctor Who story. The shape-shifting birds that cosplay Bridgerton? What? I'm sorry, maybe it's just me and my own tastes, but I found that sci-fi element of this episode to be really dull. Not that it was bad per se, but at no point did I actually care what was happening with the aliens. I just wanted to see more of what was going on with the Doctor and Rogue. The shape-shifting birds were just forgettable, and weirdly enough, barely had any actual presence or threat in the episode until like the last 5 minutes. I don't want to keep going on about it because it does sound really harsh. Like, I don't hate it or anything. I just think as a sci-fi adventure with a threat, this was really forgettable, the most forgettable of the series. The ending was fun, but really it was a slog to get there and never fully gripped me. Again, this only applies to the shape-shifting birds, not the Doctor storyline. I guess they took a back seat when writing this episode, which is fair enough because when taking the premise of shapeshifters cosplaying Bridgerton, you would do everything you can to focus on something else. It's just not a great premise in the first place in my opinion. I don't want to keep going on about that because frankly it feels unfair. The episode has a lot going for it. It's just that, like Dot and Bubble, this one is lacking a bit in the main story department. I'm giving this one a 6 out of 10 because I really do love the Doctor and Rogue stuff. Some of the best character writing this Doctor has had so far, I think. It's just missing a lot in my eyes. I'd still watch it during a full season rewatch, but I won't go out of my way to revisit this one. Thanks for watching. Let me know in the comments what you think of this episode. Did you like it? Did you not like it? Do you agree with my points? Let's discuss. I've got a video on the Legend of Ruby Sunday coming soon, so look out for that, but until then, stay wibbly, stay wobbly, stay timey-wimey, and I'll see you in the next one.